Hello, friends. Welcome to Nirmal, and this is Piyush Jain, and we're bringing to you today another corporate conversation. A very interesting company which has recorded very strong growth in revenue and profits during the last December quarter results. And to talk about that, let me welcome to the show Mr. Ashish Rai, the Vice Chairman of Aurionpro Solutions Limited. Mr. Rai, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Piyush.
Right. And before we start our conversation, let me actually apprise our viewers from the perspective of what actually has been already achieved by the company. Um, if we look at in terms of the results over the last December quarter, the company has reported almost 30% growth versus last year. They have reported 9% growth versus last quarter. Seems to be a very strong revenue growth quarter. If you take a look at the EBITDA margins, very stable, no major sort of volatility here. If you take a look at the PAT, again, the PAT has grown by 30%, almost reflecting the revenue growth. And also, if you take a look at the quarterly growth, the PAT has grown by almost 4% versus the last quarter. So it looks like they had a very strong December quarter. A couple of major announcements as I'm doing a recap for our viewers. We actually have seen there are different verticals showing strong growth. The banking vertical, the fintech vertical has shown strong growth versus the last year and the last quarter. We have seen the tech innovation group also show strong growth. We'll actually try and ask Mr. Rai what all these groups actually really imply for you. Also, we have seen the software services has done strong growth. In fact, that equipment division also has done strong growth. It appears basically, if you just take a look at a YOY growth, perhaps the equipment division was slightly down, and we might ask Mr. Rai again the reason for that. But apart from that, new sort of platforms, they actually have gained speed. Company has also done some acquisitions. Looks like inorganic acquisition has also been preferred. But that's another way. So a lot of things to really understand the business and also to know what's happening again for the next year. So, Mr. Rai, it has been a very eventful December quarter and over the last few quarters. So, before we go into any kind of numbers, let's first try and break down the business here and try and understand what Aurionpro is all about, what Aurionpro is really trying to build here. Are they really trying to assemble a moat, a competitive advantage? Help us understand in visualizing the business.
Okay. So what we are trying to build is a global IP-led products and platforms player, right? Where do we build our products and platforms? It's a few chosen segments, banking being one, fintech being the second one, transit being the third, and then there is a set of new capabilities we are building out on the technology innovation group, right? So the idea is in each of these segments, build absolute globally competitive tier one IP, and then you see three levels of leverage there. One, build IP which can actually go out and compete globally. So whether it's transit, whether it's banking, that's number one. That's lever number one. Lever number two, wrap that IP around with a set of platform services, be it cloud, be it API frameworks, which allows us to, and ongoing services and all, which allows us to really command a premium on the services that go out to our clients. And then leverage number three, tie up with industry leaders to create broader ecosystems, which is where the fintech platforms like AuroBees and AuroPay come in, right? So essentially, a global IP-led player that provides products and platforms to the chosen segments. Each of these segments, so we've chosen segments very carefully. One, these are segments we believe have very long demand runways. Second, these are segments we believe the global leadership is fragmented and we can go and take a share by competing well. And these are segments where we believe we can build absolute tier one IP. Right, so I think that's essentially what it is. If I was to spell it out, we are very prominent in lending in Asia. Some of the largest Asian banks work with us in the loan origination space, collateral management space, limit management space on the banking book. We are very prominent in transaction banking, so loan origination, transaction banking, and we are very prominent in the transit payment space, which is where we've had a lot of wins across the globe.
Right, and let's now try. Now, I'm tempted to ask you on the both the transaction and transit, but before I go to this, I want to break it down from the perspective of IP. When you say IP-led growth, the first visualization comes that actually you're building a product where you will be holding a competitive advantage. There are IP. It's a very unique sort of product, and that is something where actually you're able to scale across geographies. So help us understand how you're building it, what kind of IPs you have already built in, and how actually they are helping you to really build products, and perhaps what those IPs can really lead to sort of more product launches.
So look, we are all about IP. So pretty much every offering we have out there, what allows us to command a premium in terms of offerings is IP. So we don't really have too much which doesn't have IP in there. If I was to give you an example, right? So if you say the loan origination solutions, right? Now, corporate loans is the heart of any wholesale bank. That's where a lot of money gets made by a wholesale bank. We have a software product which does corporate loan, commercial loan originations, right? Now, this is a solution that is used by pretty much the largest banks in Singapore, the largest bank in Thailand, the largest banks in Malaysia, some large banks in India. If I was to say, how competitive is that globally? So we recently had a very respected analyst called Chartis, which is probably the most respected, risk tech. They publish risk tech quadrants. We are each of our solution sets in this space is squarely in the leaders quadrant globally, which is where we share those leaders quadrants with global players like FISN and Moody's. We are the only Asian software vendor in those leaders quadrants, right? So that kind of speaks to the competitiveness of the IP.
I have a question here. The question is, the product is good, banks are accepting it, they're using it, you're figuring into the leadership categories. Now, the most sort of important part, how are you making money in it?
Okay, so look, each of these are multi-million-dollar contracts. Typically, when we go and win the initial deal, so what money you make is essentially a license that the bank would pay, then the implementation services that go along with it. And typically, these are such mission-critical applications that once we are present with the bank will have an ongoing service in terms of adding new functionality, a new regulation comes in, etc. So some of our most of our client base, for example, 2 out of the top 3 banks in Singapore have been with us for more than 15, 17 years. Same thing with banks in Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, India, in the Middle East as well. And now the goal that we have is to expand into Europe and US, where we've traditionally not been present.
Okay, and how's the accounting being done? Because there are different types of accounting which is being followed by technology companies in this particular platform field. Usually the sort of implementation license accounting is very tricky. So what is sort of accounting you're following? Is the license payment being acknowledged upfront? The implementation is being acknowledged back end? Like, how are the revenue flow being sort of accounted here?
Okay. So there are 3 main components, Piyush, right? One is license. Now, typically, these are enterprise licenses that will get recognized upfront. There is some movement with a small slice of our base where we are selling out subscription licenses now. But by and large, enterprise licenses will get booked at the time of the bank buying that product. Then the second part is implementation fees. These will normally be recognized based on the progress of work. So typically, you're talking a 1 to 2 year project. As the project progresses on a percentage of completion basis, or on the as the project progresses, we will raise the invoices and then we will take the revenue. Right. The third component is the AMCs. Now, these are normally annual fees that the bank pays which are the maintenance fees that the bank pays on the product, and those would normally be recognized as the work progresses. As the
right.
sort of bank.
Usually, for the platform companies, the cost is only during your implementation part, and then AMC is the most lucrative because your cost of providing service is very, very low. So from this perspective, when I look at your overall revenue from the this type of product, like how much would be licensed, like as a percentage, like in your own calculation, like half of the entire revenue, like where we should see the skewedness here?
Licenses for us are it's less than 20%. So typically when you do a new deal, it's about a third each. So a third license, a third implementation, and a third maintenance. But because we have a pretty large existing base, where from that base, most of the revenue coming in would be services and AMC, and not so much license, because the license was bought some time back. So on the overall basis, I think license revenue would be less than 20% of the overall pie, actually even lesser. So the one-off revenues that we declare in our results, so the equipment and software sales that you're talking about, that is more or less representative of the one-off revenue in the mix.
Okay, understood. Now, just one question. If the Singapore banks or any bank, they would have been actually your clients like for more than 10 years, if I heard the number rightly here. What has been the impediment so far for you in really sort of spreading fastly into Europe or North America? Like, what has been the challenge so far?
So, look, these are very large applications which are typically used by the very large banks, right? So, if you say the CLO, the loan origination product that we're talking about, typically, if you're a small bank, you don't really need it, right? I mean, you normally do all your loans, etc., from within your core banking application or some such application, right? It's only when you have a very large corporate loan book. So these are these are, like I said, the top 2 out of top 3 banks in Singapore, right? I mean, you really have to be that scale of a bank for you to need a specialized application in the space. What has stopped us? I mean, Asia has been a large enough market for us traditionally, so we've been expanding. Typically, these are, you get a few banks every year and you expand there. These are very large size projects, complex projects. So we've had more demand than we could supply. We've slowly built up the capacity, and I think the time is right now for us. So first we expanded from Southeast Asia into the Middle East, and now the goal is to expand outside into Europe and US. So you have to really do it step by step. These are very large, very complex projects with tier 1 banks.
Okay, now let's move to the exciting part of the discussion here. You have been actually launching a couple of platforms, couple of tie-ups. We've observed the tie-up with BSE, and then again also Aurionpro Business, another platform which is talking about payment solutions for MSMEs. There is also basically a supply chain financing platform which is Aurionpro. Help us understand. It appears that perhaps these could be the new engines for growth. How much important are they? Are they sort of getting launched on your existing IPs? What is the traction you're seeing right now? And like how sort of revenue visibility could be coming for these platforms?
Yeah. So look, like I was explaining, right, there are 3 levels, 3 levers that we're drawing in terms of margin expansion, right? Today we are one of the highest margin shops in the Indian tech industry, if you look at it, and the reason for that is you're driving that leverage, right? So first is just the software product. That's my IP. We command a premium for it. We go out and compete. Second is surround that with services. The third is bring together IP we have in terms of broader ecosystem platforms. Now, from a revenue standpoint, these are very long-term ecosystem plays, each of them a fintech in its own right, which we are trying to build in a smart, profitable way when we already had bulk of the IP. So like Aurobees you mentioned, right? Aurobees is a platform which is meant to digitize SMEs, help SMEs sort of embrace the digital economy. Mr. Modi talks of $1 trillion digital economy. And in India, for example, it's not just an Indian platform, it's a global platform. But if you just look India as an example, how does that $1 trillion economy happen? To me, SMEs are the heart of the economy. That digital revolution happens if SMEs embrace digital, right? How does Aurobees allow to do that? It has 3 steps. One is just the digitization itself, right? So if you're a small manufacturer or a freight forwarder or a trucking company, your digital storefront, whether it's your own storefront or you want to hook up into an ONDC or Amazon or Flipkart, right? So one, we enable that digitization. Second, we tie up with financing partners to help you, finance your working capital, etc., right? So that's the financing part. And the third is the supply chain management. So if you are anywhere in the chain, this becomes your core system in terms of whether you're a warehouse operator, freight forwarder, becomes your core supply chain platform, right? So one single platform that brings everything together in a simple SaaS pricing model, right? To not just in India, we've launched it in 4 countries. And that can fundamentally change the game because we did not see anything like this out there, including doing your supplier payments, for example, through Auropay on the same platform, right? So I think this fundamentally changes the game. But these are, I would say, from a revenue standpoint, very long-term plays. It's not a significant capital investment for us, and we enable the platform and slowly sort of add scale to the platform.
I have a question here. I'm taking a name here, but that is only for educating our viewer. So delivery, as you know, is a platform. Basically the platform is there in terms of integrating the different logistics ecosystem players digitally. When I visualize your sort of a logistic platform or the way digital platform is into the logistic industry, what difference? Sorry, what difference actually, or how distinctive it is going to be?
I would not really compare ourselves to logistics companies or very, very specialized platforms as well, because as I said, right, this goes across digitization, across financing. So together with the banking partners and the financing partners that we have, and a total enterprise grade supply chain functionality, because we had that, right? So this is supply chain functionality, for example, which is used by some warehouse operators across 30, 40 countries, right? So this is so you're talking a tier one supply chain product along with digitization and financing on one single platform. So for example, if you're a manufacturer or if you are a 20 truck operator, right? Or if you're a warehouse operator, right? This can actually become the core platform around which your business revolves, right? So it's just a much more fleshed out software offering and not so much a logistics play, right? It's like it's digitization as well as supply chain.
Sure. Another question would be that from the perspective of what you're doing with BSE, help us understand that.
It's the same platform, right? So what the tie-up with BSE, and we'll be announcing a few other tie-ups. As I said, the power in these platforms is when we bring ecosystem players in, right? So BSE Agricultural Marketplace has a number of, for example, farmers organization on it. The tie-up is to enable those organizations to come on to Aurobees, right? So coming to that same question, that is how you're different from, I don't want to be naming names and stuff, but any other platform, right? Which is where, we say, can we get the farmers organizations on it? And that brings a whole different ecosystem on it. We're talking to some of the state governments, for example, again in India, can we bring the handloom manufacturers, the craft manufacturers on it, right? So as we slowly bring these ecosystem players on it, you'll see the power of really bringing digital to the heart of the Indian economy. Right, and we're doing the same thing in Indonesia, for example. We launched and we're launching in the Middle East. So again, the same thing to the local economies, but India, of course, is a huge market for us. So we're very serious about where we're going.
The question here is, how much basis points revenue do you make? Like what sort of change it can be for you?
Yeah, so look, I would not count on the fintech platforms for any material revenue growth number over the next 12 to 18 months, right? I think we are in the process of building out these ecosystems in a capital light way, in a P&L positive way. So what we are trying to drive on the overall business is a 25 to 30% growth, right? On both top line and earnings. We don't need the fintech platforms to deliver revenue to get there. Now, if as and when we get there, these are longer term upsides to the revenue growth story. I would not count on these in any material way over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay, and let's also talk about data centers, which has been some recent sort of part of your recent announcements. Data center consulting, data center itself is a sunrise industry. What you've been trying to do there, and how you're positioned there, and also what sort of revenue contribution is coming from there.
Okay, so data center it's a very high growth business for us, as you rightly said. It's a big area of investment in India, especially as we see. We have assembled one of the most capable data center design teams in the country, we believe. we've gone in and obviously we've announced a few of these highly prestigious wins in the space. So that is a business which for us is growing way faster than the enterprise growth of 30% that we have. And I think that will become a very material business. We've had some very large wins, and we are investing significantly in expanding capabilities. For example, we announced the large partnership we had with Webworks, where we are helping them build out a nationwide set of data centers. You're talking revenue in the triple-digit crores figure around. I think we announced 140 crores over the next few quarters on that business. So that is a business that is growing very fast for us. We've assembled one of the strongest teams in the industry, and we are winning a fairly good share of the market.
Right. And what is sort of a margin trajectory in this business?
So margin delivery on the business, because we are at the very high end of the market in terms of design skills, it is at the enterprise margin threshold, right? So we are in the range of 20%, plus or minus, depending on the project you're talking about.
Okay, so that's interesting here. And from the perspective of any other business which you want to highlight, because I've also noticed there has been some open loop payment solutions also again being announced, how material it is. And we were also wondering for our viewers that how different it is again versus the other sort of payment solution providers. Why actually you ventured into this, how it is integrating into your ecosystem, and the recent contracts, what do you see as a visibility from it?
Yeah, so look, on our global products and platforms play, like I mentioned, other than the banking side, which is lending and transaction banking, transit is the big investment and big bet for us. Over the last couple of years, it's been a major area of investment. So what are we trying to build? We are trying to build, we believe, the most integrated end-to-end offerings in the transit payment space, right? So not just the software, the AFC side of it, but also the hardware, the validators, which are the hardware payments. Now, most of the world, even now, you see exists on the closed loop payments, which is where you load a token and then you go to the MRT gate or metro gate and pay. Most of the world, we believe, is moving from closed loop to open loop payments. For example, NCMC out in India. Right, and we believe we have one of the most integrated, one of the most cutting-edge stack, and what we are doing is backward integrating into every point of the value chain, whether it's across hardware or software or manufacturing the gate and stuff, right? So we've announced 2 acquisitions in the space, SC Soft in Singapore, which is where a lot of our R&D and IP comes from, and Toshi in Delhi in terms of manufacturing of transit gate, right? So we've got a very competitive offering there, which is proving to be globally competitive. Case in point, a global competitive RFP in the state of California. California has 300 transit operators, and they went to a global RFP to select vendors for this transition to open loop payments and the new generation payments. We are one of the 3 vendors selected and actively rolling out now already in 6 or 7 cities, right? So which will again grow because, as I said, there are 300 transit operators. So it's proven to be a globally competitive offering. We're selling in US, Latin America, Africa, lots of wins in India, Nagpur Metro, Noida Metro, UP Transport. President Murmu just inaugurated NCMC powered by Aurionpro in Haryana Transport, I think a month back. Right, that was a big moment of pride for us. So it's a business which is doing very well. It's growing very strongly. We feel very good about the growth potential in that business.
Right. Let's talk about some numbers here. We have seen some strong growth in the last quarter. And when actually we sort of take a look at all the developments we've talked about, what is sort of capex intensity right now you're looking at, like over the next March quarter? What is the sort of capex you're looking for? What might be the sort of required estimate as per you? And also FY24, how is it looking to you on the capex intensity versus FY sort of 23, which is ongoing right now?
We are not looking at significant capex. A few things to understand. One, we are pretty much expensing all our R&D, which is the bulk of our investment. That is to the tune of, at the moment, about 7%. We plan to ramp it up to 10% over time as the economic profile of the business improves, right? So the way that happens is after expensing that R&D, we still have the EBITDA right now at about 22% and PAT at about 16, and this is where we intend to keep it, right? The second part of the investment, I think, was around M&A, and which we've done bulk of it over the last year. I think we are at the tail end of our investment cycle there. So both around the product builds, which we did over the last 3 years, banking, transit, as well as the M&A, we are at the tail end of the cycle, and we more or less finished it. We have a 10%. So we finished 90% of SC Soft acquisition. We still have a 10% will get done over the next quarter or so. And by and large, that's done, right? So there is no significant capex plans other than the normal run rate, and we intend to slowly ramp up the expensed investment that we do on R&D as the margin profile of the business keeps improving, as it has been over the last 10, 12 quarters, right? So as it improves, we'll keep on increasing the share of R&D and keep EBITDA at 22 and try and keep the PAT at 16, 15 to 16.
Right, that's a very insightful answer here. Last 2-3 questions. From the perspective of, you just highlighted the PAT and the EBITDA margins. In terms of order pipeline, how is that looking to you?
It's been growing every quarter. When we finished Q3, we announced the order book at 760 crores. I think that's very strong for us. It's been growing steadily every quarter. The way order book works for us is, one is we are obviously executing on the order book in the quarter, but there is also continuous new sales that's happening. So bulk of this order book, I would say 80 to 90% of it is executable over the next 12 months. But then we will have some of it executed in the quarter, but then the sales will then add to it. So order book has steadily been improving. I don't think, depending on the execution, it should not increase every quarter, but that's what the trend has been overall. The pipeline is materially bigger than where it used to be. We don't declare pipeline numbers for very good reasons. As you can imagine, some of these transit contracts and all are very large, and if you start declaring those, it gives a very misleading picture. But I would say pipeline is about 35 to 40% bigger than what it was this time last year.
Okay, and what actually are your key geographies which you're targeting over the next 2, 3, or 3, 4 quarters?
The goal, Piyush, we have is to increase the share of global business in the overall pie. Right? So at the moment, we feel very good about where we are in India. We will continue to win share, but we will not try and we will be very selective in terms of the deals that we take. They have to meet the enterprise margin requirements, and it has to be areas where we have an edge, and then keep on expanding into US especially. So we've recently added to the sales team in US quite significantly. We've added to the sales team in Southeast Asia quite significantly. We've added to the sales team in Middle East. So we are expanding the sales channel outside of India in very material way to try and change the mix more towards the global business.
Right. So let's close the discussion with some sort of good numbers, as we try to do. So if we summarize, it's sort of a very strong technology platform which is trying to expand globally across different verticals. You're trying to leverage your ecosystem, and that's how all companies actually usually leverage their moats. So taking this into account, when you're trying to actually maintain your PAT margins around 16%, EBITDA margins around 20 to 23%, taking all of this into account from the perspective of revenue growth, how is FY24 looking to you? Should we continue the same momentum, 25-30% growth?
Yeah, so we will continue to plan for 25 to 30% growth. At the moment, the constraint is not so much demand. The constraint is not so much our win rates, but it's our capacity. So what we've done is we've added almost 400 plus people over the last 2 quarters. So now the staff strength is 2,000 plus, and we've added to the manufacturing capacity. out for the hardware units. Both so we're just tying up with a major manufacturing setup in Malaysia to try and move manufacturing from Singapore to Malaysia, and also expand in India, both around the transit business as well as the banking business, right? So the key focus for us right now is to expand the capacity and continue to plan to grow at 25 to 30%, both on the top line as well as earnings, right? I think that is the goal. It's not a 12-month goal or 18-month goal. It's a goal that we've held to that growth level for the last 3 years, and the goal is to keep on growing at a similar level.
Well, Mr. Rai, thanks for answering all of those questions. I think we hope to again sort of keep interacting with you to build upon this discussion for our viewers. Looks like it's a technology business growing very fast, and you basically have a lot of avenues really to look forward to.
Thank you.
And with that, dear viewers, it's a wrap on this show. Hope you enjoyed it.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.